I'm not one to just come out and say somebody is a sore loser, but just some of the comments from the Canadian players, like, it's such a loser thing to say that the better team lost. Welcome back, everybody, to the From the Stands podcast. Unfortunately, Sammy Boy is busy all this week, so you guys are stuck with me doing a solo pod. Hopefully, it will be a little bit of a shorter one. Every time we say that, it doesn't end up being short, but with just me talking, hopefully I don't ramble too much, and we can keep it kind of short for you guys tonight. First things first, if you guys could please like and subscribe on the video on YouTube, that would help us out a ton. Also share it, tell your friends about it. We're trying to grow the podcast as much as we can this year, and we need your guys' help, and we would appreciate it if you guys would do that. Coming up on today's episode, obviously we're going to talk U.S. hockey wins gold over Canada in overtime in epic fashion. That was a hype moment. I was in church for the last bit of it, but I saw the ending and watched the highlights after. I just got just as excited as if I was watching it live. So definitely a huge moment for U.S. hockey and the U.S. in general. Then we're going to recap a massive Final Four-esque matchup this past weekend with Duke versus Michigan and Arizona versus Houston. We'll go over those games and then also touch on some other games that happened after and earlier in this week. And then we're going to discuss a little bit of something that I want to kind of talk about, the Naismith College Player of the Year, who's kind of in the running for that, who should win it, who I think should win it, and if anybody can kind of catch Cameron Boozer, who is currently leading the race for that. And then we'll finish it off in the Champions League with a wild ending to the playoff round this past week with lots of red cards, different decisions going down that turn the tides in certain games, and then some big upsets as well. All that and more right after this. If you're anything like me, you love hats, but not just any hats. You want a hat that looks good, but is also made with quality materials as well. And you want it to fit just the way you want it to. That's why we've partnered with Cowboy Revolution Apparel Company to bring you guys hats that do just that. I love my Cowboy Revolution hats. They're rugged and aesthetic. So whether I'm at work or podcasting, I know my hats will hold up and look great. They not only have hats, but a wide variety of apparel and accessories as well. Cowboy Revolution is also a veteran-owned and operated company, so you know where your money is going and you can feel good about it. Get your hats and apparel today at cowboyrevolution.com and use the code FTS15 for 15% off your order, or use the link in the description below. That's FTS15 for 15% off your order today. USA men's hockey wins gold against Canada in overtime 2-1. This was just an epic moment and kind of like really just rounded out the entire Olympics that I thought was great. Obviously, I didn't get to watch as much as I wanted to because I've just been super busy with work and different things. And obviously, with it being in Europe, it's on at different times, which is like, if you're a European soccer fan like I am, you know the feeling because, you know, you got Champions League games that are on at like 12 o'clock and then 3, and you're still stuck at work and can't really watch them unless you have them on in the background. You can't fully enjoy them. So if you're just a soccer fan in general and just watch sports that are, you know, across the pond in Europe, you get that it's, you know, it's hard to keep up with that stuff because it's the time difference. But obviously this past Sunday, huge, massive moment to end the Olympics. You know, we had the Gold Cup final match, USA versus Canada, in ice hockey, and it did not disappoint. I started this before I went to church. I kind of alluded to this in the intro, but I started this one before we went to church. I was watching it on the way to church. I had my eyes on the road. I was listening to it, glancing at it when we're at stop signs and stuff like that. But it was a great game, and really in the first, you know, couple periods, seemed like the USA was kind of just gonna, you know, with that 1-goal lead, really like hold on to it. And then later on in the game, obviously Canada ended up equalizing, and we go into overtime. And I'm going to be completely honest, and you guys who listen to the podcast obviously probably know that, Sam and I don't talk a lot of NHL. Obviously, we've mentioned that we really like NHL when, it's the playoffs, which is, it's typical for most sports. Like, once you get into playoffs and things are heightened and the game really is just different. The urgency just creates such a different atmosphere, such a different game to watch that even if it's like a sport you don't really care about, like once playoffs hit, like same thing for baseball. Like once playoff baseball happens and you're down to the wire and like every pitch, every at bat, every play matters, it just makes it that much more interesting. So again, obviously, Sam and I, we don't talk a lot of hockey like at all. We talk more golf on this podcast than hockey. But this was a huge moment, and obviously in the Olympics, Canada versus USA, arch rivals. You're gonna tune into this game, and a lot of people, I saw across the internet, across social media, did tune into this game, and it was epic. And then in overtime, and I'm not familiar with, like, obviously in the NHL they play full teams, but in Olympics I guess they shrink the teams. I think it was like, like 3-on-3 plus a goalie or something like that. I could be getting that wrong. All that to say, it was an epic moment at the end of the game. Early in overtime, Jack Hughes scores the game winner, dude, and it just erupts. Like, that's how you should celebrate winning a gold medal against your arch rivals. Like, just everyone hitting the ice, jumping, I mean, as much as you can on skates, jumping up and down, tackling each other. It was just such a epic moment. Um, and obviously we got our revenge back from the Four Nations tournament where Canada beat us for gold in that. And this one just tastes a little bit sweeter because obviously the Four Nations tournament is a, all-star break type of game. Doesn't mean it doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean it's not epic. But I mean, this is the Olympics. Like, if you were going to get any one of these gold medals, you would want this one in particular because it's the Olympics. It happens every 4 years. You have to wait around for it. People train and grind for a chance to represent their country at the Olympics. And it's like the highest honor as an athlete that you could possibly get. And a lot of these guys have dreamt of this moment for a while. Some guys have been there, some guys haven't, some guys this is their first time. But, across the spectrum, whatever the case may be, this is the one that you want. And we were able to get it done against Canada, which also all over social media, I'll touch on really quick. Like, I'm not one to just come out and say somebody is a sore loser, but just some of the comments from the Canadian players, like one in particular, I can't remember who said it, but basically he was saying the better team lost today. And I get in sports, there are moments, especially in one-off games, and like we're going into March Madness here next month, and like it's a whole tournament of Cinderellas, and like on that day, like if the quote unquote lower seed plays better than the higher seed on that day and has their number, obviously, the better team on paper throughout the season can lose to a lower seed, quote unquote inferior opponent. But at the end of the day, that's such a loser thing to say, that the better team lost. And it's just like, okay, the better team lost, but maybe you should have played better. Like, there were moments in the game as well that Canada had opportunities, like that one opportunity with the goal wide open and the guy hits it into the side netting. Like what are we I don't know, if you want to win the game, maybe make those. I mean, you just got to take your chances, and the U.S. men's team did. You know, would I say that we controlled most of the game? No. Does Canada have maybe some better players? Sure. But at the end of the day, within the rules of the game, within how it is scored and how it's managed and how it's played, we won. And that we won. Like, that's all that needs to be said. Like I don't know. I just miss me with all the better team lost talk. Like, okay, if you're the better team, you still lost. If you're the worst team, you still lost. At the end of the day, what matters is the the one in the win column in the biggest match of the entire tournament. So I don't know. Just miss me with that garbage. I don't know. It kind of just rubbed me the wrong way because I'm sitting here just like, if we lost, it's like everyone would just talk about like, how good Canada was and this and that. But now we won, and it's just like, well, they shouldn't have, and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, you also had a 5-on-3 power play that we killed, and you couldn't score. Like, people were expecting you to get 2 goals out of that, and you couldn't get a single goal out of that. Like, I don't know, miss me with that, the better team losing stuff. But besides Canada missing wide open goals, they really didn't have, like, they had more shots, but I mean, I'm gonna butcher this name probably, but Connor Hallebuck, literally 41 saves out of 42 shots. Absolutely insane. Dude stood on, like, this guy should be on Mount Rushmore after this. This, like, in my personal opinion, this guy had the game of his life. Again, I don't know anything about hockey, so I could just be saying stuff that doesn't even make sense, but like, that dude is literally the reason we won. Like, and if you want to, Canada, if you want to say the better team lost, well, guess what? We had the best freaking goalie in the freaking world, and we weren't losing with him in net with how he was playing, especially in this tournament as well. He's been good all tournament. And so, I mean, it was just a great moment. Absolutely loved just watching it, and just how patriotic you feel watching the Olympics when your country wins gold, and you're watching these athletes represent their country and care about their country so much. It just makes you appreciate where you're from, the privilege that you have to grow up in a great nation like the US. And it's just a great moment. Like, sports is like kind of one of the last things that we have, in the world that kind of unites us, and to be able to watch the Olympics and be united as a nation rooting on curling, skiing, hockey, figure skating, whatever. I mean, it was such a great time. And honestly, this year's been like awesome. Like, we had a great Super Bowl, and then we moved right into the Olympics, and now we're moving right into March Madness, and then we got the World Cup here, this summer. It's just, great, just a great year for sports, and really looking forward to it. And it'll give us a lot to talk about on the podcast for sure. But yeah, all in all, the Olympics were great. I loved catching as much as I could. Obviously watched a lot of curling. I know that was a big thing going around social media, but again, just being able to unite as a nation and root on our athletes is such a special thing to be able to do, and is one of the reasons I just absolutely love sports, and one of the reasons that Sam and I love having this podcast, and we could just talk about this stuff and just be able to bring you guys into why we think sports is the absolute, like, one of the absolute best things that we have in our world still. And so, such a cool moment. Good on USA hockey, and the men and women getting it done on both sides against Canada, and bringing home gold for our nation. Pretty sweet. Not even March yet, and we had a Final Four-esque type of weekend. It was glorious. I, unfortunately, if you guys have been keeping up with the podcast, know that I have been super busy and having to work most weekends, but I made sure to catch as much of these 2 games this past weekend as I could. The 2 games I'm talking about, Duke versus Michigan in DC, and Arizona versus Houston, the home team. And we'll just start with Duke versus Michigan, man. Like, this game, probably should pull up some stats so I can just not, talk about absolutely nothing the entire time. But dude, this game, one, obviously the AP poll is different now this week, and it's reflected from this past weekend and the games that went on that we're going to talk about. So when I talk about their rankings, this is old, so it has shifted, and we can dive into the AP poll in a little bit after this, because of, I mean, it shook up a bit at the top for sure after these games. But 1 versus 3, Michigan being 1, Duke being 3, and this one was highly anticipated for good reason. Duke, obviously, is Duke, has looked good all year. Obviously has some like head scratching losses at the beginning of the season. Kind of rolling their way through the ACC, which is obviously not the ACC of old, like with Syracuse being down and different teams being down. It's not as strong as it's been in other years, even though it is fairly strong, just teams that you're not kind of used to, in the recent past being good. Miami, NC State being a frisky team, Virginia super quietly being a 2 seed in the making. Once we get to March, like, I mean, Coach Odom's got those boys flying, which really, really good matchup coming up this weekend, Duke versus Virginia, which will be a great game. But the game this past weekend, Michigan versus Duke, absolutely loved watching it. I thought super evenly matched. Great coaching across the board. It was just something else to watch. I'm struggling. There we go. Michigan versus Duke. I don't know why my computer was struggling to find this. Obviously, Duke coming out on top 68-63. Cameron Boozer with 18 points. Lendon Borg with 21 points. Obviously, not enough to get it done. I think this game really showed us a lot. Super cool that we had a non-conference game in I almost said April, in February. Like right before March happens, they should do this more with other teams. I'm not sure if this is going to be like a regular thing or whatever, but I'm here for it. Like if we're going to bring two teams that are preseason to be like really, really good top tier teams. And obviously it shook out to be 1 versus 3. Like, when these games are set, it's before any games are played and things like that. So you're not sure, you run the risk of like Michigan absolutely imploding and not being good. And then you got like a 3 versus a non-ranked team and it's just not good. But we ended up on a weekend having the top four teams in the AP poll playing each other, and it did not disappoint at all. I got to this was the later game, so I got to actually like come home and sit on the couch and watch most of this. But I mean, Michigan is for real, Duke is for real, which that's one thing I kind of wanted to like park on. Duke's quietly just been like good. Like ever since Coach K happened, they brought in John Shire and hasn't missed a beat. Obviously, Coach K kind of laid the groundwork that John Shire inherited, and it's Duke. Like their brand is so big when it comes to college basketball that it's like such a pull to get these top rated recruits that it just makes recruiting easy. Like obviously when you trade hands, people kind of like want to see if the program's going to still be good, if the coach is going to be good, if the coach can still develop. And John Shire ticks all the boxes, and he was hand selected by Coach K, obviously. And I mean, if Coach K selects you, like that's a lot of pressure in itself, but it also gives you confidence because it's like you're the guy that I've picked to run this program because I know you'll run it the way that I want you to run it and how I have run it in the past. And kudos to him. I think he just broke a record first. I can't remember. I'm gonna have a hard time looking this up, but it was like, I mean, he's gonna have the most wins in Duke. I think it's the most wins by a Duke head coach in the first 4 seasons. He's gonna blow that out of the water. Obviously last year went to the Final Four, came up short against Houston with a absolutely stacked. I mean, all 5 starters went to the NBA, and I think they're all playing minutes. And then you got Cooper Flagg, who's in the running for probably Rookie of the Year, and just all of those players from the starting 5 are just playing meaningful minutes in the NBA. And so obviously a stacked team this year, having Cameron Boozer and a top 5 recruiting class once again, starters from last year returning. They got Isaiah Evans, who can shoot the lights out of the ball. Dame Sarr, Caleb Foster's obviously a returner. They got Malik Brown coming off the bench, probably ACC player, defensive player of the year once again. Like teams just absolutely stacked with great coaches. And against Michigan, they really proved that they're the number 1 team in the nation. Surprise, surprise, Duke being the number 1 team in the nation. But no one was really kind of like, I can't say this because we talk about so much on this podcast. We're not like a specific college basketball podcast, so we don't keep up with it like super closely like other people might have. So like maybe just when I say this, it's just me sleeping on Duke, but I was sleeping on Duke a little bit because I was just like, they're in the ACC. It's not the best conference anymore when it comes to basketball right now. There's a lot of teams that used to be good that aren't good anymore. Duke's kind of steamrolling through the league. It's kind of their conference to lose. But then they play Michigan, and Michigan's really, 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 really well coached. Dusty May has really got a good squad there that he's coaching up, and I mean they held they had the number one team or the number one spot in the AP poll, for a couple weeks this past week. They got Yaxel Lindenborg, who's like absolutely dominant. Obviously, going to be one of those people near the end of the season that's going to be right up there for Naismith Player of the Year, along with Cameron Boozer. So, just a good matchup all around. Duke finding a way to come out on top. Not even finding a way; they were just the better team, and it was a close game. Near the end of the game, Lindenberg got his own miss and hit a three that I really thought was going to kind of shift the tides near the end of the game, but Duke just defensively, offensively, just was the better team. I don't know. There's not much else to say about that because I don't know. I hope we get more of these where we can see out of conference games and teams play one another. And again, it might not be as good as a 1-3 at the end of February, you know, to kind of decide the number one team in the nation. Like it's never going to probably be that, but just to be able to see different, like, because once we get into conference play, you're playing your conference so much, it's like you can't really judge people against each other because it's like, well, this one team plays in the ACC, and the ACC might not be as good as like the SEC, but the bottom of the SEC might be, just as good as the top of the Big Ten. It's just like this whole thing where when we get to the end of the season and we have to pick brackets, it's like you can look at stats and stuff, but like you really have to try to look and the non-con schedule is at the beginning of the year when teams are finding their footing, like they're not, maybe they're trying to get some guys healthy. So it's so nice to have a game like this where you can get to the end, because coming into this game, I was like, shoot, I think Arizona's going to win the whole thing. And then I watched Duke and Michigan go at it, and I'm just like, shoot, I thought Michigan was for real. And all these teams still are. But then it makes you look at Duke in a different way, and you're just like, is this the Duke team under Shire that's going to get it done now? Like, is this the team that's going to go all the way? But obviously, this year has been great for college basketball. There's literally like 10, 12 teams that honestly, they put it together, and some teams at the top like are just good enough. But like, there's some teams like, 8 through 12 that, like, if they find a way, if they get healthy, if they get a decent seed and a good path, could find themselves in the Final Four and in the championship games. So, I mean, it's just a really, really good year for college basketball in general. And these games just showed that just the top of the nation, when it comes to college basketball is just so good, which kind of leads us into the other game. This game happened before, but I wanted to start with Duke and Michigan. But Arizona versus Houston, 2-4 coming into this game. Houston obviously was 2, Arizona was 4. They dropped out of the top spot after they lost to, who did they lose to? They lost to Kansas. They were on a bit of a slide, I'm pretty sure. Let's see here. Arizona schedule. They had lost, 2 games. Yeah, they lost to Kansas and they lost to Texas Tech. 2 really good teams, but obviously Kansas and the whole Darren Peterson thing is kind of always up in the air. He actually did not play this game, so that was a really, really good win for Kansas. And then Texas Tech, pre Toppin injury, really, really good team as well. So, like, that's just life in the Big 12. Like, the Big 12 is absolutely loaded. I mean, the top of it is all ranked, like Houston, BYU, Texas Tech, Kansas, Iowa State. Like, the whole league is just so good. And then you got like teams like Oklahoma State who are beating teams that they necessarily shouldn't. UCF, UCF, yeah, I'm saying that right. UCF, who we'll talk about them, who just beat BYU last night pretty handily too. So the Big 12 is just absolutely crazy. And this was the top of the Big 12 going at it. Arizona versus Houston. Arizona coming out on top 73-66. Fleming's, Houston's I wanted to say rookie, freshman guard who's been absolutely popping off, and kind of surprised that he's not really in the player of the year talks, but I guess he's just not as he's a scorer, let's put it that way, and he's kind of smaller, so he doesn't shoot the ball super well. His game is getting to the rim, mid range. Rebound and assist numbers aren't as high as maybe some of these other finalists for Naismith Player of the Year, but Arizona was able to really kind of like outmuscle and outdo Houston in what Houston likes to do. Their defense was super suffocating. Mind you, Houston's defense is not quite what we're accustomed to. It's not that they don't have good players. They had like I think a top 10 recruiting class, maybe even top 5 with some like top 5-star recruits in like Fleming and Sinak. Who obviously are really, really good players, but young freshmen. It's hard to get the most out of freshmen, especially when, you're being coached as hard as you are at Houston. But Houston is definitely not the defensive team that we've come accustomed to over the past few years under Coach Sampson. But Arizona just outdid Houston in a lot of different areas, especially on the defensive end and rebounding. If I can find the rebounding, I'm pretty sure they rebounded Houston by like maybe 20, if this is the game that I'm thinking of. If we go to the box score, yeah, I mean, team stats. That's what I'm looking for, people. All right, here we go. 3 points, three-point percentage. Wow, that's awful. But Arizona only shot 25% from 3-point, Houston 31%. Both teams not super known for the 3-point. Arizona definitely. I think they're like one of the lowest teams when it comes to attempts in the nation. Houston has some better 3-point, like with Sharp and Uzan, and again Fleming can shoot the 3, but he's not known for that. Definitely not like the past years of Houston with Cryer, who could absolutely torch it from beyond the arc. But most of their points coming down low in the paint. Yeah, Arizona shot 12 3-pointers and only made 3. Houston shot 26 3-pointers, only made 8. Rebounds. Rebounds were pretty even. I must have been thinking of a different game. Offensive rebounds, Arizona 12, Houston 13 rebounds on the offensive boards, and then 25-26 defensive rebounds. So I must have been thinking of another game, but just when you were watching the game, you could just see that Arizona wanted it more. Obviously, coming in on a 2-game slide, definitely did not want to make it 3, and took a really, really good Houston team to the end, and it just felt dominant. And not to say that Houston, you should put them on the panic meter or whatever. They can still definitely 100% win a national championship. But Arizona can too, and they have been the number 1 team in the nation for quite some time, up until like a week or 2 ago when Michigan took it over because of the Arizona slide. But yeah, both teams are for real. Watching this game was so much fun. Just watch 2 really, really good teams go at it. 2 teams that have good size, 2 teams that have really, really good guard play. And even though Houston isn't the defensive powerhouse that we have come accustomed to, still really good defensively. Their guys play with a lot of hustle, a lot of heart, and you just really, really like to see that. When you're watching a game, you don't want to see a bunch of pansies out there, running around, not playing hard. But again, this past weekend was huge. The Duke Michigan game, Arizona versus Houston game, were obviously the highlights of the day. But we also had another big time matchup, BYU versus Iowa State. Kind of the nightcap, started really late. But I stayed up and watched it because, dude, Big 12 basketball is where it is at, especially this year, man. It is so good. BYU, after the heartbreaking news. I'll use that word. Heartbreaking news that Richie Saunders is out for the season. One of my favorite players that I've been watching the past few years as he's kind of grown into being a really, really, really good player. In college basketball, and he's definitely he's going to play in the NBA, but just it's it's so hard to see your season come to an end like that, non-contact ACL tear, and just going down in that fashion. So speedy recovery to Richie. Obviously we'll watch him in the NBA next season. Hopefully he comes back better. But yeah, BYU 79 to 6, Iowa State 69. Dybantsa going for 29, 10 rebounds and 9 assists, one dime away from a triple double. Jefferson for Iowa State, 13 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists. He's one of those guys that's sneakily up there for player of the year. But obviously he's got to fight his way through players like I don't know why it's so hard for me to say that name, Dybantsa and Boozer. But again, this was just a high quality matchup in the Big 12. Iowa State coming off like probably one of the best teams currently in the Big 12, just came in with some really, really good quality wins. They had just beaten Arizona, I'm pretty sure, coming into this game. No, they had just beaten Houston coming into this game, and BYU was really looking for a big time signature win late in February because they really had no big time wins as of late, and so they were coming in, dropping a few games that they shouldn't in Big 12 play, and finding a way to get it done against Iowa State, and they really took charge in the beginning of the game and really just didn't look back. They're making their threes. They were getting really, really good production from a lot of their bench players. I don't even know how to say this name, but he had 5 points off the bench, and Condim. I'm not even gonna try to say it. Number 7 for BYU, 5 points off the bench, 17 minutes, great minutes for him. Obviously, Dybantsa's 29 led the way for them. So, good for BYU getting this game. Much needed win over a really, really good Iowa State team who I picked previously, I think last week on the pod, to win the national championship. So, not looking good for my pick there. All right. Lastly, on this day too, huge shock. Maybe not the best game, but probably the biggest surprise to come out of the weekend. Cincinnati dominates Kansas with Darren Peterson, 84-64, beat them by 20. I think this was at Cincinnati. I'm not totally sure. Do not quote me on that, but I just wanted to highlight this one because that's just life in the Big 12, man. That is life in the Big 12. Kansas coming off a huge win against Arizona and knocking the number 1 team off. And then you go into Cincinnati or wherever this game was played, and you absolutely get destroyed by a non-ranked opponent. I think Cincinnati is hovering around the middle of the Big 12 right now, so not even doing that well in Big 12 play. So super surprising, super, super surprising. Yeah, it was just a shocking result. I remember kind of like watching all these other games and then like getting to a halftime report and they were just like Cincinnati beating Kansas, and I was just like, what the heck? Because Kansas is a really good team this year. It's not like the past year or two where Kansas has been kind of like on this decline. They obviously have what some people would say would be the number 1 pick in the NBA draft um, coming up in this next draft. And Darren Peterson obviously has all his issues with pulling himself out of games and different things like that. That's been well documented, all over social media. But to see them lose to Cincinnati, just speaks to the strength of the Big 12. And I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and beat a dead horse. I've probably said that 10 times by now, but Big 12 basketball is definitely where it's at. So a surprising result, but nonetheless, that's just life. That's just life in the Big 12. All right, moving it on to Monday, keeping it with Kansas, another huge matchup. Kansas versus Houston. Kansas coming in to the Fog, playing at home against Houston. Really mad about that Cincinnati that Cincinnati result, as anybody would. Houston also losing to Arizona. Obviously, you're not going to hold losing to Arizona against Houston, a good team, but also don't want to make it 3 in a row, but end up making it 3 in a row. Kansas getting the dub against Houston. I did not put the score in for this one, so that was Monday. Houston versus Kansas, 69-56. Kansas getting that dub. Obviously, the new AP poll had just dropped, so this was a 14 versus 5 matchup. Houston dropping out of the top 4 after the weekend. Yeah, I mean, they'll probably drop a little bit more if they don't get some more wins coming up in the Big 12. But yeah, Kansas is for real. Kansas is one of those teams, again, ranked 14th, but definitely if they put everything together, and definitely if they have a healthy Darren Peterson that wants to play full games, they can win a national championship. Obviously, with Bill Self, a Hall of Fame level coach, never count them out. You never count Kansas out. They're just that blue blood school that you just always have to keep your eye on. Houston, I think, even though they're on a 3-game slide, they'll find a way. Again, life in the Big 12. I've said it once. I'll say it again. I'll probably say it some more. It is a tough schedule when you play in this conference because every team is good. Every team has the capability of beating you, even if you're ranked higher, even if you have more wins, even if you're the better team. They have a chance to beat you. Like, there's frisky teams all over, like UCF, Cincinnati, Oklahoma State, like TCU, all frisky, all have good players, all can get big wins on any given night. Keeping it in the Big 12 once again. I already mentioned this game, so we'll just blow through it. But BYU got absolutely decimated against UCF last night. I think they ended up losing by like 20 or so. I don't know. It was ugly. Yeah, I mean, at one point they were down by I think 32 points. UCF 97, BYU 84. Huge win for the Golden Knights. Without their leading scorer, he was injured on the bench. Dybantsa went for 29 once again, but it was not enough. If I can pull up the stats, I'm pretty sure the Golden Knights shot outrageous from they shot 58% from 3, shot 24. They made 14 out of 24 3-pointers. That's just crazy. Like, the 3-point is the great nullifier in all of basketball. Like, if you get hot and you're a bad team, you have a chance of beating a really good team because, I mean, just stats and numbers. That's just how it works. Like, 3's worth more than 2. And if you're dumping 3's, man, those points are going to add up really fast, like they did last night against BYU. I would be worried about BYU. Obviously, they're missing Richie Saunders. They also have some other injuries that you haven't really kept up with. Dawson Baker, obviously out for the season before the season even started. He had been dealing with, I'm pretty sure, some sort of foot injury for, I think, 2 years now, and they decided to shut it down. I think maybe it might be bad enough where he's can't play basketball at a high level. I could be wrong about that. I would have to look that up. I'm not researched on that, but that just strips away their depth totally. And obviously losing Richie Saunders, who had a breakout season last year and obviously was one of the top 3 scorers for BYU coming into the season and this season before he went down with injury. Missing him is a huge loss. Also, the energy that he puts out on the floor as well is something that they're going to miss. And him on the defensive end, super scrappy, plays really hard. And yeah, I would be concerned for BYU. Now, do I think they're going to fall out of the NCAA tournament. No, I think they've proven that they're good enough to be there. I think they'll stay in the AP poll. Not totally sure what kind of seed they're gonna get coming in. Like early in the season, everyone thought they'd be like a 3, maybe even a 2, especially with a player of Dybantsa's quality. But yeah, just with injuries and different things going on, and playing in the Big 12, they got a tough road ahead of them for sure. Got to get a few more wins. Got to get some really, really good wins coming up. Not sure what their schedule is coming up to finish off the season. I'm pretty sure not a bad schedule. West Virginia, Cincinnati, and then they play Texas Tech without Toppin though. So 3 very, very gettable games and kind of must wins at this point if BYU wants to have a decent seed heading into March. All right, that kind of runs down the games for the weekend. Obviously, we have games going on tonight. I think St. John's and UConn ended. I'm sure we'll talk that next week. Again, running a little bit long on this segment. But lastly, on this part of the podcast that I want to end on, who should be player of the year right now? Not totally sure if this is like the watch list. I was trying to find one, and like the early season like had like nobody on it, and then the late season one didn't even have like Cameron Boozer on it. So I'm not totally sure what list to look at, if there is like a finalist list yet. But I was just gonna highlight 4 players, and out of those 4 players, kind of talk through who I think will win it and who I think should win it, and kind of my opinion on that. But obviously at the top right now is Duke's Cameron Boozer. He's averaging 22.7 points a game, little over 10 rebounds a game, 4 assists a game, and shooting 58% from the field. Obviously, incredible numbers. For a while there, again, I think his season had been kind of like floating under the radar because of, again, them playing in the ACC. When you play in what is seen as a inferior conference at the time, to the Big 12, Big 10, SEC, um eh, like I feel like most of us would agree that unless you're like a ACC homer, which I kind of am because my favorite team is Syracuse, and we're not even going to get into that or talk about that. But if you look at the Big 12, and especially especially the Big 12, Big 10, and SEC, across the board, they're just better. So I think that was kind of going against Cameron Boozer, for a while, until this past weekend when they played Michigan, and he had a really good game. It wasn't like a monstrous game where he dropped 30 points, 12 rebounds, like 2 blocks and 5 assists or something like that. But it was a solid game. He had big moments. The other thing too is he's a two-way player. Great defensive player. He can switch 1 through 5, can manage against smaller guards, can manage against bigger because he's just built and he's tall. The dude just has everything, and he's going to translate to the NBA super, super well. And he's definitely, and for good reason, the front runner right now for Naismith Player of the Year. Kind of floating there around 2 is AJ Dybantsa. He is leading the nation in scoring with 25.1 points per game, 6.8 rebounds a game, 3.8 assists, and 53.2 a 53 can't talk. Sorry, 53.2% from the field. Obviously, when you're leading the nation in scoring, people are going to look at you. This is not a stat that I looked up or a fact or whatever. I heard it on one of my favorite podcasts, on college basketball podcast, with Gary V. Oh my gosh, Gary Parrish. He mentioned that the last time someone won Player of the Year who wasn't on a top 10 team, I think you have to go back to Kevin Durant. And if you know anything about Kevin Durant in college, the dude was just putting up numbers that nobody had seen at the time. Like Gary Parrish said, like video game numbers. And that's kind of what AJ's doing. Like he's not gonna average under 25 points per game coming up, and especially missing Richie Saunders on that BYU team. You know, the ball's going to be in his hands more. He's going to have more shots available to him because he's going to have to take more shots available to him. I mean, just this past weekend against Iowa State, he had to play 40 minutes to get a win. Like he had to play the whole entire game to get a win, and obviously he's capable of that. But that just goes to show how important he's going to be coming down the stretch for BYU, especially if they have any chance of making a deep run in the tournament in March. But again, Cameron Boozer's on a top 5 team, number 1 team right now, and he has the numbers that he has. So definitely the front runner. AJ Dybantsa, I feel like might be the only one that can catch him just with his scoring prowess and just, the talent that he is. But I just think the team BYU as a whole is what's going to hold him back from actually winning Player of the Year. All right. 3 and 4 very quickly. We're just going to go over guys that are just hovering right around there. I don't think that they're going to overtake Cameron Boozer or maybe even AJ Dybantsa, but it could be possible to overtake AJ just because this player is on a team that's really, really good, and it's Yaxel Lindenborg. He's averaging 14 points, a little over 14 points a game, 7.5 rebounds a game, 3.3 assists a game, shooting 49, a little over 49% from the field. Really, really good numbers on a really, really good Michigan team, which is why I feel like maybe if he were to come in second, just under Cameron Boozer, I could see that because he's on such a talented Michigan team, and he's putting up numbers like that on a team that's really, really good with really, really good players, and leading that team. Again, they were ranked number 1 for the past week or two, until they played Duke. And actually, let's look it up right now. I should have looked up rankings, the new AP poll. So Michigan is ranked 3rd, so still in the top 5 in the AP poll. And Yaxel Lindbergh's been one of the instrumental players on that team, that's allowing them to be as good as they are. So definitely, definitely well deserving of being up there for Player of the Year. But I just don't think he's going to win it because these other two ahead of him are just playing at a different level, and their teams, other than AJ Dybantsa, Cameron Boozer's team's just doing better, obviously getting that win over Michigan. All right, lastly, very quickly, Darius Acuff for Arkansas. Obviously, Arkansas is ranked 20th, so lower than BYU. Yes, right, one lower than BYU. BYU is ranked 19th, but Darius Acuff is popping, man. 22.2 points per game. Excuse me, 3 rebounds per game, 6.2 assists, and a little over 50% from the field. He had that monster game. He had almost 49 points against Alabama and double overtime, and was just absolutely popped off. He was in like a walking boot like a couple days before that game, and still ended up playing and absolutely going off against Alabama. A very, very highly looked at freshman when it comes to like NBA prospect. Um, he's good. Again, I haven't watched a lot of Arkansas. I know they're playing better than people kind of expected. And obviously he's playing really, really well, especially coming down the stretch, which is what you want going into March. But again, I don't think just because of the team that he plays on, and obviously his numbers not being as good as some of these other, finalists for Player of the Year, I don't think that he'll end up getting it. But he's obviously a player that's capable of putting on a show and capable of leading his team deep into March. And to wrap up, who would I take as Player of the Year? If you're going purely stats, you would go Dybantsa. Like, he is the heart and soul of BYU. The only reason that BYU will be any sort of relevant come tournament time is Dybantsa. I am a little biased because I do like watching BYU. I am a BYU fan. If I were to pick, I don't know. I just, again, maybe in the coming weeks, Cameron Boozer's name will just be a little bit more at the forefront of everybody's mind because of not playing Michigan and coming and having a really, really big game against Virginia coming up. But I would pick Dybantsa, to be completely honest. I just think his scoring and his defense is right up there with Cameron Boozer. His offense, I think, is better. I think he just has more to him as a player. Um, Cameron Boozer kind of is just more of like I'm bigger, stronger than you, not really skill wise. Obviously he can shoot the three. Obviously he has a mid range, but gets a lot of his points in the paint. A really, really good defender, but I think Dybantsa is a little more versatile. I think Dybantsa has more skill to him when it comes to the mid range, playing with his back to the basket. Obviously shoots the three ball really well. Gets up and down the court, can handle the ball. I just think all around Dybantsa is the better player, just on a worse team. So I would give it to AJ Dybantsa, but I think I will eventually end up being wrong when it's all said and done, come end of the season, heading into March. But super excited for March Madness. It's probably, when it comes to sports, one of, if not my favorite time of year. Obviously, we're gearing up. Probably going to do a bracket challenge for the podcast like we did last year, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, super excited for what's to come. End of the season, conference tournaments, and obviously the big one, March Madness, the NCAA tournament, right upon us and coming up really, really fast, and cannot wait for that. Hopping over the pond like we usually do, we're going to take a look at the Champions League. The playoff round ended today, and it did not disappoint. Lots of drama, upsets, red cards, everything you could have imagined. We're going to dive into it right now. We're going to start with probably one of the biggest upsets to date, especially in recent memory, in the Champions League. Bodo Glimt knocking out Inter Milan 5-2 on aggregate, won the day 2-1. Crazy. Inter Milan, obviously a finalist a couple seasons ago, or maybe even I can't even remember who won last season. So many sports, it's been so long, I can't remember. But obviously Inter Milan, leading Serie A currently, one of the most consistent and best teams in all of European football right now. Lots of really, really good players, well coached with a new manager coming in. Obviously their manager left last season. He's over in Saudi. Brought in a new manager who's gotten, just hit their stride and just kept going. Kind of picked up where the last manager left off, but unfortunately falling in dramatic fashion to a inferior team. If you can say that. Again, my rant kind of at the beginning of this podcast talking about, inferior teams and on their day, but in this format, they play two legs, and in the first leg, Bodo Glimt put three past Inter Milan and just, didn't look back. Again, put two more goals on them. Inter Milan just not being able to find, the back of the net and find the much needed goals that they needed. And just super surprising. I wasn't able to watch this game. Again, obviously, when you're a fan of European sports and European soccer, you just don't have a chance, especially I'm pretty sure this game was on at 12 today. So it was like, catch the beginning of the game and then your lunch break's over and then you got to go back to work. Then you don't get to finish it. So I obviously did not get to see this game unfold. But was super shocked when I saw the headlines and saw the score and, saw that Inter Milan crashed out in the playoff round, which is also kind of surprising, like finding themselves in the playoff round, even though they're such a good team. But the Champions League begins so early in the season that, like, if if you find your form late, like mid-season, end of the season, you can find yourselves in these positions and then you're kind of like, backs against the wall, you know, got yourself in a tough situation and kind of have to claw yourself out of it. But obviously, Inter not being able to do such good for Bodo Glimt, finding themselves in the round of 16. Not sure who they play next. I'm not totally sure how all that pans out, but good for them. Moving on. It'll be exciting to see. Like, obviously a good team. Like I said, like they play 2 legs and we're the better team over 2 games against Inter. So well deserved, and we'll see what they can pull off come round of 16 coming up next. All right, switching gears to today. Probably the best game of the day. A lot of these other games are kind of like done and dusted, like the better teams, ended up moving on. This one was pretty evenly matched. I did not think so when it came to the first leg. Galatasaray, beat Juve pretty handily in the first leg. It was like 5-2. I'm pretty sure that they beat them. Yeah, it was 5-2 in the first leg. And Juve had a tall task coming into this game. And did not make it easy on themselves. They ended up going down to 10 men early in the second half rather, excuse me. With a really, really, I don't know. So I had this game on my way home, and so I watched the second half, watched overtime, extra time, excuse me. Sorry, I'm just so stuck on college basketball. Extra time. And the Lloyd Kelly red card is tough. It's really tough. Initially, it was straight red. And if you guys didn't watch, the replay, what basically happened is he went up for a 50-50 ball and he jumped in the air and kind of, headed the ball and was watching the ball in the air as he's coming down, and he lands on the leg of the opposing player, on a Galatasaray's player leg, and obviously his studs go into him, and so initially on the field they call it a straight red card. Go to the monitor, and he comes back and he takes away the red card, but gives him a yellow. Lloyd Kelly's already on a yellow card, so obviously 2 yellow cards, he's off. And I think it's super harsh. I'm sure letter of the law, like studs high on any player, just letter of the law, that's got to be at least a yellow, which he got. They retracted the straight red, gave him a yellow, and that ended up being his second one. So in that instance, I can kind of see some leeway where it's like, okay, it wasn't even a challenge. He was just going up for the ball, and the player ended up being under him, and he wasn't, like, he was in the air already. Like, what is he supposed to do? Like, it's just a bang bang play. Like, you're coming down and you're watching the ball, so you don't, your awareness is somewhere else. So like where your feet land, kind of like it's hard for me to sit here and say that you can do something about it, because you can. Like, you can, like, flail your legs out, like land in a wider stance or whatever, just move your feet. But also in a sense, you really can't. Like, you're already committed, you're in the air, your awareness is on the ball and not where you're going to land, because you're hoping that the player's not going to undercut you and whatnot. But at the end of the day, Juve go down to 10 men, and at that point, it kind of just seems like, that's kind of it. Like, the red card, happens in the 49th minute, like just after halftime, and we kind of play until the 70th minute where Gatti scores a goal, and that's kind of like, all right, game on here, game on. That pulled them to so Juve had scored 1 in the first half in the 37th minute to make it 1-0 on the day, making it 5-3. And then in the 70th minute, Gotti's goal pulls it to 4-5, which at this point you're like, oh shoot, is Juve gonna do that? And Juve with 10 men, they were pushing. Obviously they had to, but they looked like the better team. Galatasaray looked like they couldn't keep the ball. They couldn't get it up to Osimhen. Like, they just could not do anything. They looked totally out of their element. Like, it's kind of like, like that Joker the Joker quote where he's just like, I'm like a dog chasing a car. I don't know what to like do with it if I caught one. And it's kind of like Galatasaray, like we're chasing this lead and now we have one and we don't know how to keep it. And lo and behold, they start blowing it. So in the 70th minute, getting it to 4-5, and then um I literally yelled in my truck when I saw this go down. But Weston McKennie equalizing in the 82nd minute with a header to even it 5-5 on aggregate and um get us to extra time. With that being said, also Juve had so many chances. Um there was one instance where a Juve player got into the box and instead of like just hammering it home, tried to chip the goalkeeper and chipped it over the goal. And it was just like, dude, what are you doing? And like, there were a couple other instances where Juve should have scored. And if they got one of those goals, they would have won the game down 10 men. It would have been like an incredible comeback by Juve. I think they were saying in the last, I don't know, they said like 10, 15 years. I could be getting that wrong. There's only been like two teams to come back, down 4+ goals in the second leg, in a knockout round. And Juve would have been the third one if they found a way to do it. But obviously coming up short also in extra time. Galatasaray end up putting 2 goals past them. Juve, though, just continued to miss opportunities. There was another one in extra time where McKennie gets the ball in the box and lays it off for one of his teammates. And if you look at this replay, like wide open left side of the goal and just misses it. Just misses it, dude. And those are the type of goals that Juve is going to want back, because if they just got one of those, the outcome would have been different. Maybe get it to pens in extra, after extra time. And from there, it's anybody's game. Obviously, you don't really want to leave it up to penalty kicks because it's a little chancy, but man, Juve really almost pulled it off with 10 men. And obviously, Weston McKennie has found some crazy form, and there's talks about him getting, extension at Juve after, months of them just saying that they're gonna ship him off, and wasn't in the squad, but he's kind of found his place in the squad. I think this was his 4th goal in the last 6 Champions League games. So definitely found some form in the Champions League as well, which, love to see, especially with a World Cup coming up. But unfortunately, Juve crashing out, Galatasaray moving on to the round of 16. All right, last game that we're going to touch on for the Champions League, and then we'll get out of here. Dortmund dumped out by Atalanta after 3 red cards in the final minute. We'll kind of just jump to that because again, this was a game that I didn't get to watch, but it was crazy, man. Absolutely crazy. And Scalvini had a horrible day. I didn't double check this. I'm pretty sure he was the one that the first goal for Atalanta deflected off of. He kind of, I'm not sure what he was doing. Like the Atalanta player shot, kind of like this hopeful shot outside the box that was going to be well covered by the Dortmund goalkeeper. And Scalvani, is that? Yeah, I'm saying Scalvini. I might be butchering these names. I don't have Sam here to to pronounce all these European names, so forgive me. But he like dipped down and like had the ball like hit him in like the chest, kind of like thigh area, and deflect into the goal. Like, what are you doing? And then we jump to the end of the game where kind of the red card madness kind of just absolutely goes crazy. Dortmund goalkeeper gives up a horrible ball. Like he had it was a back pass to him, and then he kind of like tried to dump it off short to one of his players, left it short. Atalanta picked up the ball, gets a cross in to the box. Dortmund goalkeeper does well to kind of like get a hand on it as the cross is coming in, and deflects it away from Scalvini, and it's behind Scalvini. He reaches back with his boot to kind of try to get something on it. Atalanta player behind him, diving for it, trying to put something on it in the dying minutes of the game to, hopefully advance, because at this point we're heading to extra time, bar anything crazy happening. But then the craziness happens, and red card. There were also 2 red cards given, one to each bench, like not someone on each bench. Not totally sure why or what happened. Again, I had to watch the highlights, so I didn't get the full context of that. But 3 red cards in the last minute. Obviously, the Scalvini one being the most important one. He's sent off. Penalty kick, Atalanta buries it with literally like the last kick of the game, and Atalanta end up moving on to the round of 16, which is super surprising. Dortmund has been doing super well this year. Usually in years past, they make like a deep run in the Champions League, but just can't find a way to get it done in the league. And this year they're doing really, really well in the league, and just can't find a way to get out of the playoff round against Atalanta, to move on to the round of 16. So super unfortunate. I know, if you guys have listened to the podcast, Dortmund's one of those teams that Sam and I collectively root for. And so unfortunate to see them bounced out, but kind of did it to themselves, had it in the bag. And then just 2 really, really unfortunate goals by the same player. And, ultimately it comes down to those margins, and they see themselves crashing out of the competition early, and Atalanta moves on. I'm not sure where to find it. I'm probably not gonna be able to find it, but I don't know all the teams that are moving on and who they end up playing, but obviously that will come out next week, and we'll be able to gear up for some really, really good matchups coming up. Just to kind of whip around just the teams that moved on. Atletico Madrid move on against Club Brugge. I probably just butchered that. Bayer Leverkusen over Olympiacos move on. Newcastle find a way against Karabag. I'm butchering these. I am so sorry, guys. Again, need Sam here. PSG move on versus Monaco, and Real Madrid find a way past Benfica into the round of 16. And that kind of wraps up and concludes a really, really good playoff knockout round in the Champions League. Again, just love this competition so much. Just, the 2-leg format. Obviously, we don't have away goals anymore as tiebreakers, which kind of leads to more extra time, and is kind of what UEFA is looking for. More game time, more money. The more exciting it gets, the better for them. But really, really good knockout round, and excited for the next round, the round of 16, with a lot of these other big clubs waiting in the wings to see who they're going to play next. But with that being said, I think that is a podcast. Appreciate you guys for tuning in and listening this week. If you guys could, please go to Apple and Spotify. Please follow and rate us there. That would help push us out to more people. And as always, please like and subscribe on the video here on YouTube if you are watching. We appreciate you guys so much. And again, we are excited that we are partnered with Cowboy Revolution Apparel Company. Use code FTS15 for 50% off your order today, or use the link in the description down below. Appreciate you guys a ton, and we will see you guys on the next one. Peace.